Hey, what's up, everybody? So I think there's no doubt in my mind that this offseason, the Packers have made huge strides when it comes to the defense. First off, with losing Davante Adams, even though that was unfortunate, with the $20 million we saved, we were able to keep players like Devondre Campbell and Rasul Douglas, two players that maybe the Packers would have had to pick between one or the other if Davante had stayed with the Packers on the offense in 2022. So first off, keeping those guys on the defense, and then looking at the draft picks, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, I think the biggest, with him obviously being in the first round, two of the biggest additions on this defense. And so now I want to go into a Rashan Gary quote and also how dominant Rashan Gary has been in the past couple seasons. So first off, here's a quote from Packers.com. They did a story on Rashan Gary recently, and so I want to go over some of the quotes that Rashan Gary had in here. First off, he says this: "If anything, it made me hungry," Gary said during the team's recent minicamp, reflecting on his breakout year. "It made me go back, watch film, see what I put on tape, see areas of my pass rush, my run defense, and things that I could improve on. It just made me hungrier to pick apart my game and make a better player for this team." And one thing that I have noticed about Rashan Gary is that he's always working, he's always grinding. If you looked in the past week at the final week of OTAs, he was one of the only starters from the Packers defense. One of them, there may have been a couple others, but one of the only guys to actually show up to that. I believe there were 55 players overall. Out of the entire 90-man roster, 55 players were there, mainly backups. But Rashan Gary was one of the players who, even though he didn't have to be there, and it's becoming very common these days for starters not to show up to the OTAs, aren't necessarily mandatory, he was there putting in the work, and I think it sort of shows from him just how much he wants to improve, even though he was insanely dominant last year. So now I want to look at some of Rashan Gary's stats from his first 3 years in Green Bay since being drafted number 12 overall in the first round back in 2019. So if you look here at the bottom, this is PFF. They've got lots of great stats. First off, first year, 256 snaps, a 55.8 rating by PFF, which isn't great, 16 total pressures, and 3 sacks. So a fine rookie season, but most times rookies, they don't always come in and dominate right away. Next year, he takes a little bit of a step up, basically doubles his snap count, moves his defensive grade to 68.1, his pressures to 46, and then 9 sacks. So a great second year from Rashan Gary in 2020. And then 2021, a year with Za'Darius Smith going down with an injury, barely playing whatsoever. And this was Rashan Gary's time to step up and to basically show, can he be that guy? Can he be a replacement of Za'Darius Smith? And it's really crazy to look back and see, with the Packers losing Za'Darius Smith, it was almost not an issue. Obviously, it would have been great to have Za'Darius there the entire year. To be able to flip him in with Preston Smith and Rashan Gary would have been incredible. But the fact that Rashan Gary was able to pick up the slack and play as he did, I think minimized a lot losing Za'Darius and not having him there a majority of the year. And if we look at his stats here, 722 snaps, so he increased his snap count, of course, with Za'Darius not being there. An 89.8 rating, which was 5th among edge rushers in the NFL. He moved his pressures to 87 from 46, his sacks from 9 to 12. So a completely dominant year from Rashan Gary with all the added opportunities. He definitely took advantage of those Za'Darius Smith snaps that were no longer there, with Za'Darius basically not playing the entire year. Rashan Gary took huge advantage of that. And so now looking at this Packers defense, with the additions on the defensive line in Devontae Wyatt, rookie, and Jaron Reed from the Chiefs, who hopefully can provide some nice snaps there in the interior, I think that this Packers D-line is going to be much better, which is going to give Rashan Gary even more opportunities. And we've just seen year after year how much he's grown from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. So I do think that year 4 is where he can really solidify himself as one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. I think we saw him start to do that last year, and I think that at least among Packers fans, we do see him as one of the best in that area. But I think it's going to take this next season to really solidify himself among fans around the NFL as being one of the best pass rushers, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, and I really do think he can do that from what we've seen in the past, from how much work he's put in and how much work he's continuing to put in, even though he has played at a very, very high level. So here's a quote Rashan Gary had to say about the Packers defense from the same Packers.com article. He says this: "We're not even at regular training camp, and our defense is flying around," Gary said of the spring workouts. "We're going to be scary. We could be as good as we want to be. We just have to push each other day in and day out." That is one thing that I'm the most excited about, is to see just how good can this Packers defense be in 2022. It wasn't too long ago, a couple of years ago, when the defense was always the issue. The Packers offense has been thriving for years and years with Aaron Rodgers leading the team. There's no question that I think that will probably continue, even though we have lost some wide receiver weapons in Devontae and Marcus Valdez-Scantling. But to have a defense that was as good as they were last year, especially in the end, in that 49ers game, barely allowing any points, a very dominant performance. Rashan Gary had 2 sacks, 6 pressures in that game versus San Francisco. To have that defense play as they did, to basically bring back the entire defense, which I wasn't sure was going to be able to happen, but as I said, Devontae leaving allowed us to keep Devondre Campbell and Rasul Douglas. And then to add Jaron Reed, and then to add 2, I think, guys who are going to be great in the NFL from Georgia, and Quay Walker at number 22, Devontae White at number 28. It's really going to be, as Rashan Gary said, I do think this defense is going to be scary, and I think that lots of people recognize that this Packers defense can take that next step forward, but I think that some people who maybe don't follow the Packers as closely, they're more of an NFL fan, they're going to be shocked, I think, when a few weeks in, later in the season, when the Packers are like a top 5 defense in the NFL. I definitely think that can be the strength of this Packers roster, and I still think having Aaron Rodgers, he's going to elevate the offense. There's no question that this offense is going to continue to thrive. That's at least my opinion. Some people may disagree, but I think when you look at our backfield being one of the best with A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, they're going to catch a lot of passes out there. I think we have enough wide receiver talent that there are going to be guys who are going to step up. It may be hard to predict exactly who. It could be Sammy Watkins, could be Christian Watson, could be Romeo Doubs. I think Allen Lazard will take a step forward. But I think we have enough weapons there to have still a solid top 10 defense. And then you add that with how good I think this defense is going to be and how good Rashan Gary already thinks it is. I think the sky's the limit for this Packers team, and hopefully we can put everything together when the playoffs come around, because the past few years, it really seemed like we had a team that had the potential to win a Super Bowl. I really think we had that potential. But unfortunately, for some reason, the past couple seasons, it just hasn't. We haven't been able to put everything together in the times when it mattered most. So hopefully this year will be different, and this defense can carry us. But that is all I have for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always. If you guys want to see more Packers content like this, feel free to subscribe down below, drop a like on the video, and I'll see you guys next time.